Hello and welcome to the Zwift Race Place. I'm Cade Vravel, and today we're bringing you a Recce ride of the Casse course in France. This is going to be ZRL race number 4, I believe, not counting those two introductory placement races. And today on the mic with me, I have Hywell Davies and Ben Russell. You guys want to introduce yourselves real quick? Hywell, you can go first if you want.
Yeah, I've been racing Premier League this is the fourth season, so one race now in, managed to get 14th in the first race in a big tough sprint, so this is a bit more my course. So every inch of the course I can see, this is good benefit for me today.
Hi, I'm Ben. This will be my first Premier League race, first Zwift Race League race ever as well for me. I've got a background in running, so sort of the longer, harder time trial style stuff, and obviously a lower weight. This course will obviously massively help me compared to the previous one. I missed the first race, wasn't really in my ballpark, but kind of glad I did, to be honest. It looked absolutely brutal.
So first up, I want to talk about I have the elevation profile pulled up on the stream for those of you who are watching, and I wanted to clarify a couple things first. We were talking about this before the stream starts, and that is the fact that this first Marina sprint will be included in the intermediates out on course, and it looks like we're just about coming up to it right now in the group ride. So I thought, Ben, if you want to start us off, we could take a minute to talk about this, and I'm going to switch us over to the view of those who are out on course.
Take a minute is probably quite an apt way to introduce that, because I think last night me and Hal did a race with a decent standard field, and we went through in about 1 minute 10, 1 minute 15 without anyone sprinting. So it's a decision to make as a team whether you potentially sacrifice someone for the sprint points early on, because if you go through that hard, you could be dropped. It's going to need a good warm up anyway. But it's a fast, 15 second, 10 second at race pace sprint, pretty much straight after the gun. I don't know what other people's views are on it.
Yeah, it's going to be tough out the gate, and I think your start position will dictate what sort of advantage you can get. So if you get in the pen early, get on the front line, and you're pretty much going for a 1 minute power PB while sat on someone's wheel to then sprint from the beacon to the banner to have a chance, but it's a horrible way to start a race. So I can say I'm definitely not going to be racing for that first one.
All right, so if anybody's going to go for this, it's probably going to have to be a sacrifice on the part of the team, because it is early on and it's going to be moving really fast. We can start with Hywell. Do you think that the pack is going to be split up almost immediately here?
I don't think anyone's going to try and get away on that first sprint. There may be riders that a team will burn, say go for the sprint. If you score and ease off, it should be early enough to just get back in the group and work your way back up into the main pack. But if you go super fast at the start and don't finish in the points, it's kind of a wasted effort. So I don't know. I think some people will go for it, but you've got to be confident you can get straight back into the group if you do get through, and then you've got to work to get back on. But it's not going to split the pack up, but it might just drop a few people who get it wrong.
Okay, Ben, do you have anything to add to that?
Not really. I think Hal's right. I don't think the pack's going to go crazy fast trying to break it up. We've
I'll be in town on Monday anyway.
raced on this
Brilliant.
course a few times, and it's hard to
I'll let you know when I head over.
It's so flat and going to be so fast, and the heavier guys are still going to be in there. The pack's going to be moving too quickly to get away.
Okay, well, we're coming over the river right here, and I wanted to take a minute to kind of transition towards talking about our first sprint out on course, which is going to be the Pave sprint reverse, and this one's going to be really interesting because of how close it is to the Aqueduct KOM. And we were talking earlier on the stream about how this is most likely going to be the place where the pack splits up for the first time. Hywell, do you want to talk about preparing for this first sprint real quick?
Yeah, we got quite a bit of distance until we get to the first sprint, but the course is very, very flat, and the size of the groups will mean that anyone who wants to try and make a break is going to have to work in a decent sized group, say 6 to 10 people, to cause a split to threaten the points at all. But I really think everyone's just going to be cagey, sitting in, and we'll just get positioned for the sprint when it comes. We're still quite a way off it yet, so I think things will really settle down. And when you're racing some big ranking races on this course, the part as we go along the coast here and through the fields is always quite it's quite passive. So when we start getting towards the sunflowers, then things will pick up a little bit. But at the moment, this is quite nice.
You mentioned that it's usually quite passive through here. Do you think any team would maybe try and change things up and push the pace a little through here? Ben, maybe you want to speak to this one?
I think, as Hal says, you're not going to get a break so much as a split. You'd have to attack so hard to get 3-4 seconds off the front. It would. I don't think it would work, and you'd potentially ruin your race before it's even really started. There's enough opportunities later for splits to happen that I think it'd be interesting, and it would be a great watch. I don't think it'd be successful though.
I think one thing, and this is something that I don't think you guys have to deal with in the Premier Division, is the subject of upgrades down in the Community Division. So I know one strategy is for riders who are securely in their category to push the pace a little and try and get riders who are on the verge of upgrading to push hard enough where they fall over the line. I know you guys don't have to deal with that as much, but do you think that'd be a viable strategy?
It's quite nasty. But I think you can sit in on this course quite easily and just draft while others are working 1 to 2 watt per kilo higher. It's only when you get to the climb, which is going to be somewhere between 4.5 and 7 minutes for most riders, and I don't think that's really going to trouble the 20-minute power. I think this is quite a relaxed course for your 20-minute. I don't think you'll threaten it much, because certainly on the first lap, your power is going to be quite low just sitting in a group. The only problem will come is if you get split and then you're forced to chase on the second lap, and then you're really putting some effort in on these flat roads. So the key thing is to stay with the group.
Yeah, I don't think you'd be. If someone is close to an upgrade and they know it, sitting at the back, they're not going to tip over. And I mean, it's a different tactic. It's not something I'd want. I wouldn't really want to win it on a spreadsheet, to be honest. But it's an interesting way to think about it.
It was just something I wanted to see what you guys thought, and I think you're probably right that it's too easy to sit in where those riders who are on the verge of an upgrade aren't going to be doing the work to chase you down anyway. So, or they can sit in the draft and conserve energy. But I thought it was an interesting tactic, and it wasn't something that I've really heard from many teams before. Kind of dirty. We're getting a little bit. We're moving on a little bit, and I wanted to take a quick minute to mention the power-ups that are going to be on this course. I believe that they are going to be Anvil, Burrito, and the Draft Van. Ben, maybe you want to start. How do you think the power-ups could play into this race, just in general?
I think it's better having... I don't like those 3 power-ups. There's going to be a lot of people, if they get the wrong one, who aren't particularly going to use it, because the main focal point of this course is always going to be the Petty King of the Mountain. And so the Anvil's obviously not going to get used there. The Burrito's not going to help massively until the downhill. And the draft is okay, but the Feather obviously would have been used more. I think you're going to get a lot of people sitting on Anvils. I'm not sure, apart from the main downhill, when you'd use it.
Highwell, do you have anything to
Yeah, it's not great power-ups for this course, because the Anvil isn't going to help, and because the descent is going to be a big group descent anyway. Even if you get a breakaway over the top, it's very rare for 1 or 2 riders to stay away on a long descent that favours a group. So if you hit the Anvil, you might get a little bit of a rest. And the same then with the Burritos for the sprint. You might just keep someone off your wheel, but I don't think the power-ups are really going to make a big difference on this course. Ideally, the aero is king, especially when you get to the sprint finish. But if you don't get anything, I don't think it's a disaster for this race.
I don't think it'll be race changing like some races can be.
No, I mean the best thing that'll happen is someone will get an Anvil, and they'll hit their Anvil by mistake on the climb, and that'll be funny.
It won't be race winning; it'll be race losing, perhaps.
Yeah.
Huh. That's something I didn't even think of. I didn't even realize that an Anvil could work in reverse for you on a climb. But I suppose that's probably true.
And yeah, it wasn't fun.
So one more thing I wanted to mention is the fact that the C's and D's, I believe it is, only do a lap and a half, and I'm not entirely sure what a lap and a half ends up being. Zwift doesn't have like a distance or a finishing point on this, but I'd assume somewhere around the Aqueduct KOM. Do you guys have anything to say about strategy for if you're going to be finishing around there?
The
key thing with custom courses, people get fixated on banners, and I've been guilty of this many times in a race. You've got to look at the distance left. You've always got to just keep watching it. If you have a big TV, stick a post-it note on your screen, put an arrow on it to watch your distance, because the distance will just be everything. If you fixate on sprinting to a banner, even if it's 100 meters out, that'll change the whole dynamic of the race, because you might sprint for the banner and realize you've got another 100 meters to go and people will overtake you. So just keep an eye on the distance. I don't know exactly where it's going to finish, but just treat it as any other race, but you watch your distance, not the banner.
Yeah, I agree. And it's not going to be that hilly unless it is the Aqueduct. it's not like 600 meters is going to take you 3 minutes up a 6% climb. So if you can normally go 40 seconds out, go at, I don't know, 300-400.
All right, perfect. I wanted to touch on that real quick because of the fact that their finish is different, and also because it's a little vague about where they do finish. So I think that watch the distance thing is probably perfect advice for C riders and D riders who are still wondering where am I going to be finishing. I think, like Hywel said, worry less about a banner and more about a distance, because unless they're finishing somewhere on the petite KOM, I don't think it's going to make as much of a difference. Before we get to the sprint, I wanted to talk about bike choice real quick as well. Zwift Insider has said that Aero rules the day on this course. Do either of you think it'd be beneficial to go with a lighter bike for that KOM?
No, definitely not. It's not a steep climb, and if you're on your own at the front in this climb, it will be you're just giving everyone behind a chance to draft off you. So there's absolutely no benefit in choosing a lighter bike to try and go faster up the climb, because the whole KOM is draftable all the way up, all the way back. So yeah, you need the most aero bike setup you can get.
And
Coming over the top on your own, you're going to get caught on the descent. And if you're coming over the top in a group, you're going to be drafting down or drafting up. So yeah, the lighter bike makes no difference. You're going to be looking Tron S5.
yeah, on the subject of these bikes, like you mentioned, the Cervelo S5, the Specialized Venge, Tron, and for those of you who are in the lower levels, Canyon Aero Road might be a good choice. I think when I looked on Zwift Insider, that was about 6th or 7th on the list. And say that again?
Have they nerfed the Dogma? Because that was the best all-rounder. That was pretty aero and pretty good up the hill. So I think they changed that recently. I'm not sure.
It might have been on there. I think Cervelo S5 and Specialized Venge were the top two, and then obviously Tron always performs pretty well. And I had Canyon Aero Road in there because that's available for people who are level 10. So I'm not sure. Do you guys know what I think we're coming up on the sprint right here, so let's try and transition to talking about this right now. Ben, maybe you want to start. So how do you think this sprint is going to play into the race? And I think Hywel had mentioned earlier it's going to break up after this sprint. So how should you be planning so that you manage to stay in the front group?
Depending on your role within the team, if you can sit sort of mid-pack to get the draft, you're going to have to pick it up to get through. But I wouldn't leave everything on there unless you're really chasing points, because you're virtually straight into a couple of switchbacks at 3-4% into the aqueduct, which is going to be a couple of minutes after. So I think it depends on your role within the team. And remember, after the aqueduct, you then only got a couple of minutes to KOM, so you're going to have to pace it. I think there's going to be two different approaches, those going for points and those just staying in the pack.
All right. Sorry. Hywel, anything to add to that?
Yeah, this sprint is going to wind up from a long way out as people battle for position, and then sorry, just putting the fence on. Right, so you've got to be in the pack getting up to that sprint. If you're not in the pack going up to the sprint, then what will happen is everyone will shoot off the front, split will open up, and then you've got to try and chase to get back onto the group before the aqueduct when it all starts again. So it's important, if you're not contesting the points, you've still got to work pretty hard. And as you saw with the flatland loop, after that sprint, it's quite a tactical place to attack. And if you're not in the group on the descent, then you're going to get dropped. So on this one now, if you've just had a sprint and you chase to get back onto the group, you've got about 30 seconds rest or recovery before the aqueduct. And then the same thing again, you've got to sit in the group and do enough to stay there. Otherwise, you're just going to get spat at the back again. And even if you do get dropped out the front on the aqueduct, you've then got to do the same again before the KOM. So you might not win the points, but you've certainly got to contest them.
So how about for riders who are more have more of a sprinter body type or are better at sprinting and have a little bit more difficulty on the climbs? Ben, I was hoping you could talk about this first. How do you think they might tackle this? Would it be more beneficial for them to target the sprint and the aqueduct and then kind of just drop for the KOM, or should they try and stick in?
On their 5, the big thing for the KOM is the 5-minute power, and unless you can put out good 5-minute numbers, you're going to get dropped. I'm thinking probably for them guys, get as many points as you can on those couple of sprints and just see what's left. A long way up that climb if you are one of the bigger guys. Depends on the race though as well, how it's been up to that point. I would probably, if you had sprinters in your team, you're going to be trying to get as many points as you can there because there's not going to be a lot left after. Especially the C and D guys who have only got a lap and a half. That first KOM is going to be hard.
Yeah, I think that's something that's interesting for the C&D racers because they're going to have, the pace is going to be quite a bit higher, I think, because of the fact that it's a shorter course. So we're not quite to the KOM yet, but we're descending off the aqueduct now. You had mentioned that you think only the riders with that kind of top 5-minute power are going to be able to survive through the aqueduct there. Do you think it's going to be a pretty reduced group starting the KOM, or will some of those riders who were dropped on the aqueduct catch back on? Highwell, maybe you want to start on this one?
I think this is where team tactics will come into play, because if there is a split and you've got numbers in the team, they might push between here and the KOM to keep a group away. Because if there's a split and people smell a gap, then they will try and force it. But otherwise, I think it's a case of trying to conserve. Because most of the times I've raced this course, you get another lull here because people know what's coming with the climb, and they're just trying to stay relatively easy in between, unless they're chasing. But yeah, this is where you could get a split. And if a team decides to really push it, then it could open things up.
Ben, anything to add to that?
So I totally agree about the lull. It's inevitably there's a bit of a lull here. If you've got a small breakaway, it normally gets chased back down. A lot of people have kind of mentally got a bit of a no. They know what's coming up. It's going to take a brave person to push really hard with that around the corner.
All right, so it's almost more of a mental thing here where we're gonna experience a little drop in the pace. So it sounds like you guys think even if there are some riders that get away over the aqueduct, the pack will probably come back together unless there's a really strong team up front. So I'm not quite sure exactly how far away from the aqueduct the Petite KOM we are right now, but I think we're getting a little bit closer here. So I wanted to start talking about that real quick. I know you guys said you think the pace will let up a bit here. What about when we first hit the early slopes of the Petite KOM? Do you think riders will be going right from the gate, or will they be waiting a little longer and try and push at the top?
With that climb, you get a little bit of a sort of 2-3% for the first couple of minutes before the switchbacks, where personally I tend to just sit in the group unless someone goes. There's really I only think there's one way to attack that climb, and it's stay second, third wheel. Don't go to the back of the group. Just stay up near the front. Be vigilant, and you can cover any breaks that way. It's draftable, but you don't want to be sitting too far back because attacks will happen, especially around the corners.
Hywell, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I like to. There's two things I like to do with this climb. Is firstly set a Garmin lap time, so I know what my 5-minute power is, and this is around about a 5-minute climb. So at any one point, you know if your average is creeping over what your limit is. And I kind of like to think I've got some in reserve. So the easier the lower slopes are, the more you've got for the upper slopes. So the second thing then is to divide the climb into 3 parts. So we're just about to start part 1 now, which is the lower slopes, which are quite mellow. It's draftable, and what you're doing here is just trying to fight for position, just making sure that there isn't any group getting away, and you're in the front group. As Ben said, stay in third or fourth wheel. And then after the first 2 hairpins, the climb starts to get a bit steeper, and this is where people battle for the front and start thinking about making a move. So this is where you might see teams working on the front. So this is the hard bit, and that's where you're very close to your 5-minute power to try and stay in the group there. And then the final bit is after the cobble section, and that's when you start thinking about whether you want to go for points or not on the KOM, because you really need to start thinking about sprinting, using your power up, or just sitting back and being ready for the final bit of the climb.
All right, so it sounds like riders should probably check out their Zwift power profile and take a look at that 5-minute power and know it for when they're coming into the race here, so that they can stick right around their average. And like you said, I think the 3 parts thing is really interesting. I've never thought of tackling a climb like that before, but I'd assume in a race it's pretty helpful. I also wanted to talk a little bit about the differences on this climb between the C's and D's and then the Premier A B field, because the Premier A B field will be doing this climb twice, whereas the C's and D's only get 1 go of it. Do you think that the C's and D's, do they have more to lose on this climb than the other fields out there? Ben, maybe you want to start this time?
I don't think you have much choice. I think if you don't go pretty hard, unless your race is particularly sedate, I think even in the A's, B's and the Premier guys, it's going to be where the splits occur. You're going to just have to do what you've got to do. I don't think there's a way of pacing this cleverly. I think apart from the 5-minute, you've just got to put whatever you've got to do to stay in that front group. You may not attack over it to get a lead in the 2-lap races, but you've got to be a seriously strong guy to be able to hold a lot in reserve up here.
Okay, and I think right here we're coming to about 6%, 7% gradient. It's getting a little steeper here. But before we close out talking about the lower slopes, I wanted to ask you guys real quick, maybe Hywell, you can start this time. Do you think that it would be beneficial to use your draft power up in that lower section of the climb there, because drafting is definitely still a factor. It's not quite too steep for that yet.
At the risk of being too honest here, but the aim of this talk really is to give people the best possible chance of doing their best in the race. It's not a case of hiding tactics, but if I had a draft power up, I would hit it on the last bend just before the banner, or the finish banner. So you get the draft through the line, you get a new power up, but then you're drafting on what's possibly the hardest part of this climb, which is the 300 meters after the summit banner, because you can still get dropped there. And that's where you really need to dig in with one more kick to try and stay in the group. So you've got the group on the descent.
Another kind of interesting landmark I wanted to mention on the climb is that castle right there. And I feel like when I'm racing on this climb or on this course, that's kind of like my signal that we're about halfway up the climb. I don't know if anybody else uses the castle like that, but that's how I always gauge how far up the climb I am and about when I'd want to attack if I was going to attack. So we're coming up towards the top here, and I wanted to talk real quick about riders who might be going for the fastest through segment on this. If you're going for the fastest through, do you think it'd be more beneficial to hang out at the back of the pack for the start and kind of work your way up through the pack towards the front by the time you hit the banner, or should you just kind of be on the front working hard the entire time? Ben, sorry. Ben, maybe you want to start, because I feel bad making High Will talk while he's climbing here.
I wouldn't want to be on the front. I'd want to be fourth, fifth wheel. I think sitting at the back is, obviously from a draft point of view, makes sense, but it's too risky. You get too many breaks, and I think you'd expend a lot of energy getting to the front. So I think, I'd sit second, third, fourth wheel. And as Hal said, the cobblestones, it flattens off slightly. Use it, get your cadence up a bit, ready to really attack the last two incredibly short switchbacks. That's where I'd attack if I was going for the fastest time.
Okay, so kind of a similar strategy to first across the line is that third or fourth wheel strategy, which has seemed to stay pretty consistent throughout this climb, because it sounds like you get the benefit of the draft, you can watch any moves, and you're in good position. So we're coming up to the top here in not too long, so I thought we could kind of address the descent. I have a feeling that there'll probably be at least a couple people who go off the front over the top of this climb. In most categories, most races, there'll probably be a couple of riders who break off from the pack. Do you think that they'll be brought back in by the bottom of this descent? High Will, we can start with you this time.
Again, it's all critical about that final kick after the KOM, because the descent doesn't really start for about another 200-300 meters. So you need to really pick pace up to get into super tuck or to get into a group. But once you're in a group, this is not a descent that you will sort of lose contact on. It's not steep enough. So the key thing for me really is whatever it takes to get over the top in the front group. And if that means sprinting max effort at the top with everything you've got left, you are going to recover.
So you think kind of risk it to stay in the front group here at the top of the climb, even knowing that you're going a little over your 5 minute, because you will have a chance to recover on the descent?
Yeah, it's you want to pretty much go to your max to stay in this group. Seconds of effort at the top saves you 5 minutes of chasing.
Okay, so we're coming through the banner now, or at least we are on my screen. So this is the section where we were just talking about it's worth it to put in a little dig to stay with that front group. I know we've talked about power-ups a little earlier, so we said there's not much that power-ups are going to help with here. But I did want to talk about preparation for that marina sprint, because I think that's the next major landmark on course, and I think that's right around where we'll finish the stream. So I wanted to ask, like, how do you guys go about trying to get as much rest in as possible on a descent like this? Like, kind of where in the pack is ideal for getting the most rest on a descent? Ben, we can start with you this time.
I think it depends on your weight a lot. If I know I'm a lighter guy, and I will go out the back if I'm super tucking too long. It's also important to be aware this descent flattens off a couple of times. It's sort of in steps. They're not necessarily the most visible, and so if you're super tucking and not paying attention, you can go quite quickly front to back. So I'd be acutely aware of where you are in the group, and you know your own weight. You know how you normally descend. Some of the heavier guys can probably get away with tucking at the back, and they'll work their way through. But it does flatten off, and it almost goes slightly around the left-hand corner here. It's pretty much back down to standard flat before it then descends again past the Moolman writing.
So definitely be aware of those steps, and especially if you're a later rider. I do see Hywell's tucking right now, so he's able to do that, but I think for us lighter riders, that might be a little bit more difficult, and you're definitely going to have to stay alert. So if we're thinking about the second lap here, where the A's and B's would be finishing right up here at the marina sprint, how do we think the pace is going to change once we hit the flat off of the descent? Are we think they're going to be moving fast, or kind of there'll be another lull in preparation for the final sprint to the finish? Maybe Hywell, you want to go this time?
This is a difficult course, really, on the sprint to know exactly what's going to happen, because there's two scenarios. Is that the pace stays high on the descent, and a team really does keep pushing the pace, and when the speed is at 70k an hour plus, it stops anyone going off the front and attacking until the final sprint. But what tends to happen on this course is you get a small select group Sorry, just turn the fence back on. You get a small select group, and then people start watching each other and waiting for someone else to sprint. So if the speed really slows down to 40k an hour and people are soft pedaling and just bunching up, then it's very open to a long range attack if you've got the right power up. So you really got to read the game and watch what's happening around you. But I think it depends on the size of the group. A big group, the pace will be high. 10 to 15, I think people will just start watching each other. And if it's less than 5, then I think it's just very much like the end of a Grand Tour stage. It'll just be a bit of a free fall on the sprint.
Okay, perfect. We're coming up on the sprint here, but it looks like we have a question in the chat that I wanted to ask before we finish out the stream for our viewer. Amy Williams wants to know, how much benefit does Super Tuck give? For some riders, could it be worth just soft pedaling? I know we had talked about how lighter riders could benefit from continuing to pedal, but I thought maybe you guys could address how much benefit Super Tuck actually gives. Ben, maybe you can start on this one.
I prefer to soft pedal. I find if I super tuck for more than 10, 15 seconds, starting up again, especially if you have to then start up with a bit of a shock, can make my legs feel a bit lacticy. So I prefer to just keep them turning over, especially if you've worked really hard close to VO2 up that KOM. You don't want to be absolutely flooding your legs with lactic by just stopping completely. I think another thing to consider is what trainer you're using. If yours is particularly slow and responsive, I know some take a couple of seconds to get pedaling again, and if you have to jump quickly into the pedals, you're potentially going to get dropped, especially on the downhill. So I know equipment is sort of a touchy subject, but you do need to be aware of that.
I don't know, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, the Super Tuck is three things really. It's either recovery. So if you do want to break after a hard effort, you can sit in a group, Super Tuck, take a drink, tighten up your shoes, ready for the sprint or whatever. Second thing it allows you to do is to just watch around you as well. So if you can pay attention to who's doing what, so which groups might be fighting for position, or if anyone's starting to wind up, ready for sprint, it just gives you that moment to watch other things on the screen. The third thing is, which I quite like, is you can use it to put other riders under pressure. So if you do a flat out orange number sprint, and then you get a gap of about 2 seconds, it forces others to do the same. So they start sprinting, and it's only when they catch you can they go into a super tuck and they overtake you, and then you get a free ride. So it's actually a useful tactic on some courses where you might be fighting for position, ready for the final sprint, especially on this one. And it's a good way of keeping the pace high. So if you don't have a huge sprint, you're probably better off keeping the speed high. So it's in your interest to use the super tuck after a little sprint to keep the pace moving along, rather than opening up for the big sprinters to hit 17, 18 watts a kilo and leave you behind.
All right. Well, we are just about, we're through the sprint now, and we're coming back over this bridge here. So we've done just over a lap on the course now, and I think we've pretty much hit everything that I had planned. Unless you guys have anything else to add, I think we'll start to finish it up here. Anything else to add?
One more thing on this section here. And it's useful to know on this section that you've got about 6 kilometers until the sprint, because this is where, if you do get dropped in a group on that KOM, this is where you guys really need to work to try and rejoin. So it's about gauge and effort. You've got about 10 minutes to really try and close the gap before all the fireworks kick off again. So it's just worth having that in mind, that if you do have to chase, that's where you gauge your effort.
All right, Ben, anything else to add before we wrap up?
No, I'm just looking forward to seeing some of the races and watching some of them on Tuesday night. I think it's one of the better courses, in the sense that there's definitely something for everyone out there. Like, it doesn't matter what type of rider you are. There's somewhere where you can score points or do something or play a role for your team, which I think is great for everyone.
Sorry, just had to get to my unmute button. All right, so that just about concludes our live coverage. If you enjoyed this, please subscribe to the Zwift Race Place so you don't miss any more of these streams. We'll be doing one every Saturday at the same time. Well, actually, I think there's 1 week where the time change makes it a little different for us here in the U.S., but more or less every week at the same time, the Saturday before the ZRL, and we'll be going over the course with different commentators each time as well. I want to take a moment to say thank you to Highwell and Ben for their awesome advice, as well as everybody everybody from the WLC squad for supporting this, especially Bryn Griffith, the leader of the WLC squad, for helping to coordinate and everything. I think that just about wraps up. You guys want to say bye real quick?
Yeah, cheers, guys. Good luck for Tuesday, and not good luck for those racing on Monday, unless you're in WLC.
Good luck, everyone. Enjoy it. Yeah, it's an hour, but it'll be an hour of fun.
All right. Thanks again. We'll see you next week.